Good afternoon, sisters and brothers. How's everybody feeling today?
Good.
All right, good. Let's do it a little bit. All right. Bienvenidos, compañeras y compañeros. We want to welcome everybody here today to the Justice Center in Barrio. My name is Karina Garcia, and I'm a co-convener of the People's Congress of Resistance. I'm also the proud daughter of Mexican immigrants, working class Mexican immigrants. I was a student organizer at Columbia University, where we shut down the anti-immigrant Minutemen Project, a fascist organization that intimidated and threatened and harassed undocumented immigrants. I was a public school teacher and a delegate for my union, and currently I work as a reproductive justice trainer and educator, traveling around the country, helping Latina activists organize for reproductive health, rights, and justice. I'm also the founder of, one of the founders of the Justice Center in Barrio, and there are many founders in the room today. Make some noise if you're one of the founders. Woo! All right. Make some noise if you built this center. Woo! Make some noise if this is your center. Woo! All right. So sisters and brothers, friends, we're really happy to be here today to join together to launch what I believe to be a truly historic endeavor, the People's Congress of Resistance, which September 16th and 17th in Washington, D.C. will stand in dramatic counterpoint to the official U.S. Congress, which, as we all know, consists of the privileged, the pampered, politicians who are wedded one way or another to two political parties that don't represent our interests. Working families in this country, our communities are, as we know, in a profound crisis. The People's Congress of Resistance constitutes a clarion call for a mass independent movement of grassroots resistance, not the phony resistance that they're trying to sell us as the Democratic Party elite. Today we will hear from a number of the conveners of the Congress from our live stream, which will last about an hour. We know there are groups watching in many towns and cities across the country. Many are watching in small groups in all 50 states around the country. Each of us has a role that we can play in mobilizing and organizing our communities and participating as we give organizational expression to a genuinely grassroots resistance movement. So we want to welcome you to our space. We're so honored to have you here. We know that there are 15 parties that are happening right now throughout the country. We want to welcome you too. Let's make some noise for our fellow resistors in California. So that we can fight for the things that our communities deserve. And we know that while we're here, we're not really unique, but there's a lot of other young people around the country that are doing the same thing. And here in this center, I'm 32 years old and I'm one of the oldest. And I know that around the country, there's a lot of other young people that are doing the same. And young people are overwhelmingly coming out for Black Lives Matter. They're coming out standing for the rights of undocumented immigrants. They're standing against a ban, they're standing for living wages, for marriage equality. Young people around the country are organizing for the things that we deserve, for real political rights, for real social rights, for real economic rights. And we know that even still, young people can be demonized by the political establishment. One quick point I wanted to share as we're organizing is, we know that recently what came out is that actually the Sanders supporters are suing the Democratic National Convention. And why are they suing them? They're suing them because the Democratic Party leaders, the elites, decided that they were going to sabotage the Sanders movement. And those emails came out and people found out that they decided on their own who they were going to sabotage, and they betrayed the so-called democratic process, right? And what is their response to those people who are saying, those people who donated money, who donated time, who are organizing their communities, who are participating in the political process? What was the Democratic Party elite's response to them? You would think that they would be ashamed of what they did, But instead, they're saying that as a private corporation, they can decide for themselves who they want to have as their nominee. Despite the whole process that they have, all the hoopla about the Democratic National Convention and the primaries, they're saying to people, those people who have been out there in the streets, canvassing, organizing their communities, they're saying to them that it's a private corporation and they can decide for themselves what they want to do. So they're not even denying it. So that's a lesson to us, all those people who have been organizing. We should take what they're saying very seriously, right? That is who they are, and they don't represent us. And so what are we going to do instead? We're going to build our own organization. We're going to build our own parties, and we're going to build our own resistance.
All right. Yeah.
And so, woo! That's why we're having this live stream event right now. We're trying to bring together all those people who have been resisting, really resisting, not fake resisting, not pretend resisting, but actually putting some skin in the game. We're trying to bring those people together so that we can build the kinds of organizations that can actually transform the system, not these phony little pretend things that are happening with the DNC that don't amount to any of the change that our communities really deserve. So that all said, I want to read out some of the different conveners that we have representing that real resistance of people who are organizing and fighting for change in our lifetime, right? Because it's easy to say wait when nothing affects you. When you have health care, it's easy to just say wait on single payer, or we can't do that right now. But when you're the one who has to tell your children, who have no solutions for them, it really hurts, and it's not a matter of waiting anymore. So the situation is urgent, and we all know and we feel that, and we're trying to put some pressure on these people as well. So I'm going to read a list of these different conveners that we have that we're going to hear from today, and then I'm going to go straight into our agenda. So we're going to hear from Professor Jared Ball. He is a professor from Morgan State University. iMixWhatiLike. We're also going to hear from Dennis Banks. He is the co-founder and national field director of the American Indian Movement. Juan Gutierrez, who is the Full Rights for Immigrants Coalition coordinator. Dr. Margaret Flowers, co-director of Popular Resistance. Anoa Changa, deputy director of MPact. Professor Jodi Dean, professor at Hobart and William Smith Colleges. We have Jonathan Hutto, coordinator from the Prince George's People's Coalition. We're going to hear from Eugene Puryear, Stop Police Terror Project DC. Yasmina Mervet from One DC. Gloria La Riva from the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Brian Becker, Anti-Coalition National Coordinator. And Cindy Sheehan, author, anti-war activist. All right, so I'm going to go straight into our agenda. If you have any other questions, you can email them to us. We won't be able to get to all of them, but we will try to address them before our live stream ends. And everybody, it goes without saying, but it's important to say anyway. Everybody here has something that some role to play, any way that they can contribute. And so we're really trying to bring those people together and organize a real resistance movement that can, give our communities what we really deserve.
What's the email?
The email we have the email for the outreach and the email for the volunteer. What's the email for questions?
Outreach at congressofresistance.org, and if people want to share the live stream now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the email for the questions. So it's outreach at congressofresistance.org. Outreach at congressofresistance.org. And for all the folks that are watching through live stream right now, you can go ahead and share that live stream on your Facebook feed, and around the country we'll have lots of people who are doing the same, so that can greatly impact the visibility of what we're trying to do here. All right, so just a couple of words about the Congress. So the People's Congress of Resistance will also be a project in its own platform and vision of what America should be if it were a society that were truly devoted to the fundamental rights of people and not profits. So that is a society that places political and economic power in the hands of the people rather than the rich. It's a society where each individual needs not just the right to vote for politicians who serve the rich, but the rights to a basic job or a basic income, healthcare, housing, education. So that all said, I'm going to introduce our first speaker today. So our first speaker is going to be Mr. Eugene Puryear from the Stop Police Terror Project, DC.
If you're watching online, there's such spirited applause here in New York City. I had to wait a little bit before I started so that our audio was correct. Well, greetings to everybody who is here with us in the room in New York City. I'm Eugene Barrio. I'm with the Stop Police Terror Project, DC, and welcome to all those around the country or wherever you may be who are watching this live stream. I think this is an incredibly important thing, and I'll just start by saying I'm also looking forward to seeing all of you watching wherever you may be in person at Howard University, September 16th through 17th, when we put on this People's Congress of Resistance. And I don't know if anyone watching this needs any extra motivation for what's going on, but I think we've seen really just in the past week how dire the situation is and how important the reality is. I mean, you look at this healthcare bill that the House of Representatives just passed, and it isn't just the issue of 14 million people losing healthcare in 1 year, which is easy to say and it's a big number, but what does that really mean? It means that over 1 million people in the midst of one of the worst opioid crises that has ever existed could lose their health care and access to health care, or could have to pay tens of thousands of dollars more, that some cancer patients will be paying $140,000 more, $140,000 more. At the end of the day, I'm really making one clear point, is that people are dying. People are in fact being killed, that social policies are being passed, that the actual result of them is that millions of people will actually have their life put at stake and may in fact lose it, that senior citizens could be kicked off their health care and just sent and left to die. And these are the Republicans who said don't pass Obamacare because of death panels, and now they seem to be a death squad. And I think to speak to the point that Karina made quite well, you see many Democrats and other people who claim to be the opposition saying that they have the answer. I saw Cory Booker, a senator from not too far from where we're sitting right now in New Jersey, who said, well, I'm for universal health care. And someone asked him what his response was. And this is the same guy that voted against a bill that would have made it cheaper for people to have prescription drugs here in the United States of America. So you can see that in the actual Congress, it really is just a den of thieves. It's a group of people who will say whatever they have to say. They'll go from being middle of the road one time to left wing another time to right wing another time, whatever it may be, whatever their groups and they're paid for is the way to show up and get votes while not losing one dime of campaign dollar donations from corporations and billionaires. We can't rely on those people to lead any sort of resistance in the United States of America or anywhere around the world. And we certainly can't rely on anyone in Congress to link the resistance in the United States of America to people who are struggling against what that $54 billion for the U.S. military, that oppression, the people struggling against that, the people struggling in this country here. So that's why the 16th through 17th of September of this year, we're coming together for the People's Congress of Resistance. And I know often these types of events and these types of moves can feel daunting, because when you're saying you aren't going to rely on any of the big people, we're only going to rely on ourselves, it seems, what power could we possibly have? We don't have money. We don't have the billions of dollars. We're not on CNN. But this is going to be the type of Congress that isn't worried about that, because we're going to build it based on going directly to the people. We're going to be at all of the fight backs and all of the protests. We're going to be going door to door in the working class and oppressed communities. We're going to have people from all 50 states. We aren't the people who just say that everyone who lives in a quote-unquote red state is some terrible person who we have to forget about. We're going to go into the coal areas. We're going to go to the collapsed steel towns. We're going to bring those people together with the people from Spanish Harlem, with the people from Southeast DC, with the peoples of the Barrios in California, with the peoples living on the res, all across this nation, to build a People's Congress of Resistance, taking our inspiration to some degree from the struggle of the people in South Africa against apartheid, when they set up the Freedom Charter, when they set up the United Democratic Front, where they came together, grassroots groups, sometimes very small groups from all around that nation, coming together, setting up a common agenda of what it meant to be liberated, and in our case, what it means to be liberated and to resist. And then they brought folks together under that umbrella and built a huge movement based on people power that took on the most powerful forces in the world and won. And that's what we plan to do. And that's why we want you to join us at Howard University. So please, if you don't do anything else today in the course of this live stream or right after you get off of it, go to our website, go to the People's Congress of Resistance website, sign up to volunteer, sign up to help get the word out. We have organizers who are already starting to move. We're going to work with whoever wants to do something, whoever wants to build, to make it as easy as possible for you to get there, to get your friends there, and to reach the groups and the people who are resisting in your community so we can start to fight back. We're going to be our own saviors and our own liberators. We're not waiting for anyone. It's the People's Congress. Thank you so much.
Another round of applause. All right, so our next speaker, Brian Becker from the Anti-Coalition, the national coordinator. Welcome, Brian Becker.
Thank you, Karina, and hello to all the people both here in New York City and, of course, around the country who are looking at the live stream. I'm going to speak very quickly, briefly, because we do want to hear from our other conveners. And I'm going to explain in a little bit more detail what the motivation is for a People's Congress of Resistance. We believe, those of us who have convened this Congress, that we have come to a fork in the road for the progressive movement. Since November 8th, since the election of Donald Trump, millions of people, maybe tens of millions, have participated in protests of one type or another. 20% of the country has been participating in some protest. And what we can see all around the country is real engagement for people. But the question really will be in the coming weeks and months is what happens to the resistance to Trump. Hillary Clinton announced 2 days ago that she is a citizen activist resistor now. That Hillary Clinton is part of the resistance. The Democratic Party has coined the phrase, the resistance. You could see that all around the country, there are really two resistance forces. One is not a resistance to Trump. It's really the Democratic Party trying to marshal the real resistance and make that resistance a tail to the kite of the Democratic Party to harness votes in 2018. And the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump, while unconventional, is not really an anomaly. He is an extension of political and institutional power that has reigned supreme while the Democratic Party held the majority in the House and the Senate and had control of the White House. Donald Trump is pursuing a policy of unrestrained capitalism, eliminating all social and economic rights, limiting or taking away any limitations on corporate America so that it can pollute at will, making sure that ExxonMobil and the conservative oligarch billionaires who constitute the dominant part of his agenda are able to really ram through their program. But actually look what happened when they passed that health care bill that Eugene talked about. The Democrats who lost the vote were singing. They were singing a celebratory song because they felt that the passage of this health care bill that would take away health care benefits for as many as 20 million people would result in the Republicans losing the election in 2018. They were celebrating the actual loss of people's health care benefits because they felt it would ultimately damage the Republicans. In other words, they don't care about the people. And when they had control of the House and the Senate and the White House, they could have done whatever they wanted. That was in 2009 and 2010. They could have introduced and passed single-payer health plan so that all the people in red and blue states right now would be covered with affordable, accessible health care, which would have ended this debate once and for all. And the Democrats absolutely refused to do it when they could have done it because their loyalty is not to the people, it's not to their constituents, it's to the same pharmaceutical companies health insurance, capitalist corporations, and big manufacturers that the Republicans too are loyal. In other words, they could have done it and they wouldn't do it. So what is the fork in the road? People who are part of the resistance are being told now by the Democratic Party, including Bernie Sanders, including those who were part of the electoral insurgency, the remarkable electoral insurgency that Sanders led, that they should unite to get the Democrats control of the House, that our resistance should be about that. But again, let's look back and see what did it mean when the Democrats did have control of the House and the Senate. It meant nothing. They did nothing. We also have to note that this resistance to Trump, when Trump sends missiles to Syria and kills Syrian people in violation of international law, when he dropped a 21,000-pound bomb, a bomb that kills all living things within the radius of 1 mile on Afghanistan, one of the poorest countries in the world, when he did those things, that Democratic Party opposition applauded him. They saluted him. They said he was looking presidential. As soon as he dipped his hands in the blood of people in the developing world, he became their president too. If we're going to be our resistance, we can't simply fight for health care and education and housing and education at home and turn our backs on the Syrian or Palestinian or Iraqi people or the people of Latin America who are fighting to free themselves from imperialism. A real grassroots resistance movement has to be an internationalist movement for peace and against imperialism, in addition to fighting for social justice at home. We are in an era of unrestrained capitalism now, meaning all of the social and economic reforms or limitations on capitalism are being lifted. The Democratic Party will not stop this because the Democratic Party is for this. And as Karina said, they made it clear to the Sanders supporters, it's their party. It's their private corporation. What will cause change? This is the task of us who are initiating this Congress. What is the point of the Congress? The point of the Congress is not to change the Congress of the United States. It's an institution of repression and oppression and exploitation and imperialism. The goal of the People's Congress is not to change who is in the White House, to replace a Clinton-type figure for Trump. It's not to replace the Supreme Court. These institutions are institutions of oppression. They are the opposition to change. Change, if you think about it, never comes from the oppressor. Change only comes from the people. If you look back at our own history, the racist apartheid system called America, called the USA, which made apartheid in America legal until 1964, when it formally came to an end with the passage of the Civil Rights Act. When you look at what happened between 1955, when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white man in Montgomery, Alabama, and triggered the Montgomery bus boycott, between that time in 1955 and the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, when you look at those 9 years, one thing is remarkably obvious. The Congress did not change at all. It was still dominated by white, rich males, mainly Dixiecrats, completely racist, and yet in 9 years, the system of apartheid came to a formal legal end, not a real end, but a formal end. What happened in those 9 years? Congress didn't change, the people changed. The people went into action. The people became conscious. The people engaged in struggle. And once they decided that they were going to fight and be the actors on the political stage, there was no power so great that it could stop them. And so the Congress had to bend under the pressure of the people. That's where change comes from. We are not trying to come to Congress on bended knee with petitions in hand and beg these oppressors to do the right thing. We're saying, we know who you are. You are the enemies of working and poor people in America. You represent a system of unrestrained capitalism that's at war against working and poor people in America. And what we seek to do with the People's Congress is not change the oppressor, but to change the people. And what does that mean? It means to deepen resistance, because when people resist and struggle, their ideas change. Consciousness doesn't come from books, it comes from struggle. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, it never will. The people learn to struggle. As Huey P. Newton said about Fidel Castro in the July 26th movement, they couldn't have defeated Batista, these small armed guerrillas of 12 or 20 people in 3 years. The July 26th movement became, in many ways, an army of education, where the people learned that the military and the police were not bulletproof. In other words, that they could fight against this terrible dictatorship. The people themselves became empowered. It wasn't Fidel that made the Cuban Revolution, it was the Cuban people that made the revolution. It was their sacrifice, their determination, their ability to fight. The leadership catalyzes, facilitates the leadership of the masses of people, not replaces or substitutes for the masses of people. So the People's Congress must be an instrument of struggle. It must also be a school. It must be an educational process whereby we bring the ideas of building an independent working class movement, independent of the ruling class parties, so that everyone understands the people do have the power, but only if we feel that we should have the power. If we feel the billionaires and millionaires and politicians should have the power, and we beg them for crumbs, then they will have the power. But if we feel we have the power, if we know we have the power, if we educate our class in the idea that we can be the power, we will be the power. We have to, thirdly, communicate these ideas all around the country. And as Eugene said, we're not going to stay in blue states, in democratic strongholds, where it's easy to be progressive or liberal. We have to go to where the working class and oppressed forces all around the world are suffering in isolation, which means the Midwest. It means the South. It means the Southwest. It means the Upper Northwest. In other words, we have to link a movement that's truly nationwide. And fourth, and this is most important for the Congress, we have to build the Congress. We have to recruit. We have to make sure that the working class people who are never in the U.S. Congress, who will never get a chance to stand at a podium on the Capitol building, whose voice will never be heard, because there's not one worker, not one poor person in the U.S. Congress, not one. There's no immigrant there. There's nobody with a green card there. There's no prisoner, of course, who's in the U.S. Congress. The vast majority of our class is completely excluded. But for them to have a voice, for our class to have a voice, they have to be at the Congress. That's our job, each and every person here. We have to decide, not just as an organization, but as individuals. Are we going to make this People's Congress of Resistance be the kind of agency where the working class that is never heard from is actually not only there, but at center stage in determining the program? And as Eugene said, at that Congress, we will determine a charter like they did in South Africa, or a manifesto, some points of unity that unites all the different sectors of the working class. If we all fight separately, if the Black community has to fight separately against racist police violence, if Muslims have to fight separately against Islamophobia, if women have to fight for women's rights and to control women's bodies by themselves, if the LGBTQ community has to fight by itself. In other words, if every entity, every oppressed constituency has to fight by itself, we lose. But if we unite in a People's Congress of Resistance, we can feel the power, we can learn from our communities, we can build together, we can recruit, we can become that power. That's the vision that we're trying to bring with the People's Congress of Resistance. Thank you.
Florida, in Chicago, Illinois, in Boston, Massachusetts, Grand Forks, North Dakota, Albuquerque, New Mexico, New York City, Philly, Pittsburgh, Custer, Washington, Seattle, Washington, Los Angeles, California, Oceanside, California, San Francisco, California, and Sacramento, California. And as Brian mentioned, we want to have people in all 50 states from all the different sectors of our society, from the Muslim community, the LGBTQ community, the Black community, immigrants. We want all the people who are struggling, all the people who have not only nothing to lose, but a whole world to gain at the People's Congress. And so we're asking all of you to, if you're watching now, go to congressofresistance.org. That's where you can volunteer. Start thinking about what is it that you can do to get there? What is it that you can do to get your neighbors there, your family there, your friends there? How is it that we can build a Congress that represents our interests? We're not waiting for them to change. We are going to change the system ourselves. On that note, I want to introduce our next speaker, Professor Jared Ball, who is coming to us from Morgan State University. iMixWhatiLike. Please welcome Professor Jared Ball.
First of all, thank you all very much, everybody for convening, everybody for coming out and participating. I'm not going to speak long. I just want to reiterate some of the points that were already mentioned. Like I said, I'm honored to be involved in part because as someone who is constantly, as many of us, looking for answers and ways to, to primarily galvanize those of us who have a certain amount of shared and revolutionary politics, I think the People's Congress of Resistance is a perfect mechanism for that. I think one of the glaring problems that exists, as many of us already know, is the inability to find practical ways to bring people together. All these different communities fighting in isolation in many cases often only find collective places to move within the Democratic Party. And as already been said, we should be looking at what has happened here with Trump's election, not only as a product of the failures of the Republicans and the right, but also the failures of the so-called left and its ostensible nominal political body, the Democratic Party. It is the constant voting for the lesser of evils that has led to nothing but more evil, less progress, less political advance for those of us on the so-called left. And I think this is, again, a perfect place for us to build something. Again, this is a practical example, I think, that provides, would offer people a place to build outside of, again, the Democratic Party. Trump is the logical product of this system. He is not an aberration. His presence should be final proof that the practice of the lesser of evil politics leads only to more evil and less political progress. One example, as Eugene has already mentioned, is the example of healthcare, where we are told to be, when Obama was running, we were told to be patient. When he got rid of Tom Daschle for having dared to write in 2003 that he thought universal healthcare was something good, we were told to be patient, that the Affordable Health Care Act would be a bridge to something more progressive. But like is often attributed only to Republicans, this was just another Democratic Party phony liberal bridge to nowhere, or a bridge to go backwards. So again, the People's Congress, to me, what has attracted me to it, what inspires me to be a supporter of it, is that it's an effort offered. It allows for, again, a tangible option for those being picked off by false pretenders to activism, progress, or radicalism. A lot of people are trying to rebrand themselves post-Obama as having been more to the left than they ever were. And now people want to offer up some sort of critique of his 8 years. And I have to admit, I can't wait for this Garrow book to come out. But in reality, it was their efforts that blunted more progressive or radical attempts from being developed. It was the left that has, as many of the great leaders of our past have pointed out, it's the so-called liberals and the left that are the first barriers to real progress. So when I look at the campaigns like in Jackson with Chokwe Antar Lumumba, or the sister I heard about running out of Ferguson on Eugene's show the other day. I would like to see that these just not be isolated attempts that take place within a hostile political party apparatus, but that we can provide a standard and a place for these efforts to be implemented and be strengthened and further radicalized. So while I'm not convinced at all that electoral politics is our only or best solution, it is one space around which we can organize and build and develop the ability to do much more. And in that context, I think what the People's Congress provides in terms of an example of what a real People's Party would look like and real people's leadership would look like, I'm exceedingly inspired and excited to be part of this. So I just wanted to say those few words and thank you all again for putting this together and all these people convening all around the country. And I definitely look forward to seeing you all at DC at Howard University in September and learning more between then and now what we can do to really make something happen. No more begging. We can provide an example and actually build something to get real power. So as Fred Hampton used to say to you, I say peace if you're willing to fight for it. So peace, everybody. And thank you very much again.
Jared Ball from Morgan State University. iMixWhatiLike. I just wanted to mention that right now in New Orleans, the people are marching to take down the Confederate monuments that still fill up the city. Let's give them a round of applause. But it just goes to show, in 2017, they still have those Confederate monuments. There's still the white supremacists fighting to keep them alive. And it's only the people themselves fighting to take those down that's going to make the difference. So our next speaker is Cindy Sheehan, author and activist. Please welcome Cindy Sheehan.
Can you all hear me? Okay, great. I've been having a little bit of problems with my connection here. I just want to say this is the best TV show ever, and that it's better than Netflix. So it's been great sitting here and listening to everybody who, of course, I have completely agreed with. I did write down a statement. I usually don't write down what I'm going to say, but I didn't want to forget anything. So I'm going to put my statement up, and I'm going to be reading from it. And I just want to say that we're on the same wavelength, because a lot of the things that I wrote in my short statement have already been said, but I just want to say them why I am involved in the People's Congress of Resistance. I am honored to be included in this movement with other activists who have long recognized, excuse me, I'm also having allergy problems, that identity politics are bogus and are holding the movement back from true change for all workers. I have a personal guideline that I will only work with groups or on efforts that are serious in the intent of smashing the US empire. In fact, unknowingly or knowingly, people who rely on identity politics and only focus on the current outrages of the Trump administration, forgetting that the Obama regime was a continuation of longstanding imperialist policies, are holding the revolution back. Also, we, as true revolutionaries, cannot allow people like the war criminal Hillary Clinton to define the resistance for us. Recently, Clinton claimed that she was joining the resistance, and of course, what that means is only resistance to the Trump regime or the Republican Party. This gives many liberals permission to forgo the struggle to end capitalism and imperialism in favor of get out the vote efforts for the equally bad, if not worse, Democrat Party. As the call for the People's Congress of Resistance states, the U.S. Congress have long been the representatives of Wall Street and the war machine, and with the stranglehold of a unitary political system where the distinction between the two parties is for all intents and purposes non-existent. It's time for people to recognize this and join with each other in opposition to not just Trumpism, but the entire imperialist system that allowed Trump to ascend and replace another able servant of empire, Barack Obama. This Obama, who bragged about being at war for all 8 years of his regime, and who is now profiting from Wall Street speeches. Do you think Wall Street would be rewarding him with such largesse if he wasn't good for business? We know his regime consistently bailed out Wall Street and the banks, while at the same time literally kicking the people to the curb. As our ecosystems are collapsing due to capitalist profit and exploitation, we recognize that committed struggle against the systems of oppression is much harder than opportunistic protests or opposition. But in the end, we must wage this existential struggle for the present and future of human life. I think that this is a struggle worth fighting. I see the effort of the People's Congress of Resistance not as nonpartisan effort, but a-partisan. I believe we need an entirely different system here in the US if the nation, and by extension the world, has any chance of survival. And this is not something that can be put off or use the other stale old concept of incrementalism. We need to act yesterday, not be hypnotized with the enticement that even if the entire Congress turned Democrat in 2018, that anything would be changed for the better for the people. We have recent history that shows us otherwise. As Marx said, if we the people unite, the only thing we have to lose is our chains, and we have the world to gain. I'm excited to go forward with this effort. Again, thanks for being here and giving me the opportunity to be part of this principled action. Thank you.
So Cindy Sheehan is an example of just the kind of people that we want to come to this Congress. Her son was killed in Iraq, and she became sort of famous by going to Bush's ranch house in Crawford, Texas, and setting up an encampment there and demanding an end to these imperialist wars that use poor and working class people as cannon fodder, that go to destroy other countries and tell us that they're going to save them, but we know what the reality is, and we want people like her to be able to be part of this movement, right? People who are affected by these wars, who lose their family members by these wars. Meanwhile, these billionaires are making money off of these wars that are killing people around the world and in this country itself. So we salute Cindy Sheehan, and we hope that many, many other women like her will join us. I want to mention that we are right now, 2,700 people are with us right now. So we want to say hello to all of you and welcome as well. All right, our next convener, Anoa Changa, Deputy Director of MPact. Please welcome Anoa.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much from Atlanta. Wow, I'm very honored actually to be here in this space with all of you, with all of our other conveners, having a opportunity of real, meaningful, people-driven process and resistance efforts. I mean, not this milquetoast, we're going to celebrate with our, pretty pink hats resistance, but like real people-driven process in the streets, on the ground, in the community. What we need is for all of you who are out there to tell a friend, tell 5 friends, tell more people, so that we can have as many people in DC, that we have as many people volunteering and helping to build out and shape this process, because we want this to be as representative as possible. This is not just a select few people who get together, the who's who, or the popular folks, of progressivism. This is really about representing the voices of the brothers on the block, of folks from the holler. I mean, like, we're really trying to build a meaningful, forward-moving process that is engaging everyone as to the fullest extent possible, which is why I'm so grateful to be here, to be a part of this, to be speaking to you all. I mean, I really, I may not have some of the same institutional knowledge or experience as some of our other conveners, but at the same time, I've watched and witnessed as a child of radical parents, the long struggle that many of our people, many of our communities have been engaging in, and it's been a very long haul. There's so much wealth and resources and history behind us, but we really do have a way forward. And that way really depends, our success going forward really depends upon all of us working together and sharing and messaging and building and collaborative efforts. So I just ask everybody to continue to share information from People's Congress of Resistance, sign up like everyone else has already said, and figure out where you can contribute. And if you can't travel to DC in September, can you help sponsor someone else to travel? Because the one thing that does happen, and which we've talked about, we've acknowledged, is that these types of events can be cost prohibitive for some of the conversations and voices and people that we actually need to have in these rooms. So can we come together and find a way to help support people from, parts west or the south side of Chicago, or folks in the deep south like where I am? Can we help support to bring more of those activist organizing community members to the table to have a voice, to participate, to lend their expertise and their voices to this conversation? Because that's what's missing in a lot of these spaces that we see right now. There are some really great efforts that have been going on nationwide. I heard mention of my girl Cori Bush running out in Missouri, but there are so many other people, so many other voices who do not get the same attention because they do not have the same access to resources, and they don't happen to know someone who's able to elevate their voice in the same way. That's where all of us come in. We have the opportunity and the potential to help leverage even the meager resources we all have collectively to help bring those voices to the forefront. That is how we move forward. So I thank you. No one is sending video. Well, I thank you all very much for letting me participate and give my words in. I really just truly believe that, together we win, we move forward, we build stronger. To follow up with Professor Ball, I don't know, I agree that electoral politics is not the end all be all. It is a tool. We have many tools in our arsenal and we have to use them all. So thank you.
That was Anoa Changa coming to us from
It said no one is sending video.
All right, live television. Excellent. Okay, so our next speaker coming to us from California is Juan Jose Gutierrez. He is the Full Rights for Immigrants Coalition coordinator.
Okay, so I'm Juan Jose Gutierrez with the Full Rights for Immigrants Coalition, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the rights of the millions of undocumented workers and students who are working and studying in the United States today without rights and constituting the most oppressed sector of the working class in America today. While activism against the Trump administration's fascist policies is on the rise among all sectors of the American people, including Latinos fighting for immigration reform with a path to citizenship for millions of undocumented workers, the fact remains that we need a national, comprehensive, grassroots strategy. We need to build a grassroots effort capable of demonstrating with its massivity our opposition to Donald Trump's racist, anti-poor, and anti-middle class policies. President Donald Trump has viciously denigrated all immigrants, especially Mexican immigrants, by calling us criminals and rapists, and by threatening us with massive ethnic cleansing deportations. Moreover, he has tried to intimidate Mexico with NAFTA's cancellation, has threatened to invade Mexico in pursuit of those bad hombres, and to use nuclear weapons in order to force Mexico to pay for the construction of his giant Iron Curtain wall. Latinos are we constitute almost 13% of the nation's population. Until now, however, our barrios are not politically organized, we have yet to translate our growing members into organized power. Few organizations exist with the membership, leadership, and capacity to wield power and address the myriad of issues that confront our communities. Nationwide, we have no organized effort to politicize our people. Consequently, as a community, we are plagued by debilitating apathy, indifference, and complacency. Too many of us do not realize the gravity of the crisis we face as immigrant communities. The crisis we face can only be overcome with the development of a countervailing strategy and structures. That is why it is important for the immigrant rights movement to be an active part of the People's Congress of Resistance. And I just want to underscore the fact that we support 100% what was stated before by Brother Brian Becker, that the People's Congress of Resistance should aim to become an instrument of struggle, a school of education, aim to build a national movement. And of course, we need to all get to work to do our very, very best effort to build the Congress. So once again, I call on everybody, on all immigrants who are looking for ways to effectively struggle to finally bring about the reform of comprehensive immigration reform with the path to citizenship, to join all of us that are going to Howard University in DC on September 15th and 16th of this year. We'll see you there. Thank you very much.
Historic 2006 that happened when millions of undocumented immigrants all around the country came out a day without an immigrant. Those demonstrations showed the tremendous amount of power that poor and working class people have in this country. The people who everyone said, were too afraid to protest, too afraid to defend themselves. The people who were living in the shadows, the people who had no rights, were super exploited. Those people came out in the millions, all across the country. And after that movement, there came out the undocumented, unafraid, unapologetic, all of those young people that came out that have been politicized. So there's a tremendous amount of power, a tremendous amount of inspiration that the immigrant community has, and we're excited to have that community present at this People's Congress. So our next speaker that we're going to welcome today is Jonathan Hutto, the coordinator of Prince George's People's Coalition. Jonathan, you're on mute right now. Can you unmute yourself, please?
All right, everyone can hear me now.
There we go. We got you now. Okay.
Let me first of all thank the conveners of the People's Congress, the laborers, the organizers. Let me give a special shout out to that Howard alumnus, Eugene Puryear, who comes in the best tradition of Howard University alumni and organizers who take that knowledge and take it directly to the people. And so I'm ecstatic, I'm elated, and I'm proud to be in solidarity with all of you. I too am a Howard University alumnus, and I'm very proud that the People's Congress will be gathering at my alma mater, Howard University. Howard University has a strong tradition of activism, particularly amongst its student core. As many of you who are students of the struggle, not just students, but laborers within the struggle, know that a generation ago in 1968, that university was chain locked, closed by the student body and its supporters in solidarity with the liberation struggles of that time, the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, the movement to end the Vietnam War. And it was 2 decades later, again in 1989, on that campus that the progressive forces forced off the Board of Trustees the architect of the election of George H. Bush. That architect was known as Harvey Lee Atwater. Howard University appointed him to the board, and for lack of a better term, all hell broke loose. And so I come in that tradition. We come in that tradition on that campus. I was inspired on that campus 20 years ago by the late Amamu Amiri Baraka, his poem they called For Nation Time. And so when we talk about a People's Congress, we know that this is an idea whose time has not only come, but whose time is right now. This idea is an extension. As people have said earlier, that power concedes nothing without a demand. The idea of a People's Congress in 1972, Gary, Indiana, on a micro level, that was a sort of People's Congress. It was a black political convention where the late Amiri Baraka was not one that he was one of the conveners, but also one of the ones that held that Congress together with all the different factions within the Congress: black nationalists, black Pan-Africanists, black integrationists, even black electoral officials, those from labor. So when you talk about a Congress of people, we're talking about people that come from a multiple issue oriented, multiple ethnic oriented, multiple geography throughout the country, multiple interests. We're not going to be a blanket woven from one thread, but we're going to be more like a quilt, a patchwork quilt of unity, all come together with that basic understanding that the powers that be, those in Congress, those in the Supreme Court, those at the executive office, even those who occupy state government, is not representative of the interests of the people. What a Congress like this will expose, as we sharpen those contradictions, is that those in power in that form, in electoral power, represent the moneyed interests. And so I'm beyond ecstatic and enthused to give my 20 plus years of experience in this movement to build a People's Congress. I'm not going to be much longer, but I'll be a little stronger on a couple of points. Why a People's Congress? Why a People's Congress? Because not too often, the narrative goes something like this. And I ask some rhetorical questions. In the 1980s, the most forward anti-racist, anti-oppressive formation was known as the Rainbow Coalition. Okay, and the major voice of the Rainbow Coalition was the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. I asked the rhetorical question: where's the Rainbow Coalition today? What happened to the Rainbow? Okay, let's come back 25, 30 plus years later. That massive organization that put Barack Obama into office. Where is Obama for America? Okay, when we look at Senator Sanders, Bernie Sanders, who led a magnificent mobilization, when he got to the Democratic convention, many young people who were just now getting involved in the electoral process did not know what was about to go down. But if you were around in 1988, if you were looking at Atlanta, Georgia, where I was born and raised in 1988, you knew exactly what Bernie Sanders was going to do: mobilize 18 plus million, take them to the convention, and endorse the establishment, endorse the nominee. And now our revolution, which is around the country, mobilizing the masses, but we don't control our revolution. Our revolution is not controlled by us. And for those of us who get involved with our revolution, you're going to be controlled by it. So when you talk about a People's Congress, you're talking about something that you own, a formation you own, a formation you control, a formation that you build block by block, precinct by precinct, house by house, apartment by apartment, homeless shelter by homeless shelter, street sign by street sign. This is exactly how you build democracy. And finally, what I would say is this: two final points, and then I'm going to close. This is nothing new. Brian talked earlier about the civil rights movement. I'm reminded that if 1960, Albany, 1960-61, was one of the major movements of the civil rights struggle, all the way up until 1968, when our leader, the Reverend Dr. King, was taken from us in Memphis, that entire 8-year period, you're talking about the Democratic Party in the White House. I don't know if that comes out in the narrative. The greatest, most transcending, most transformational mobilizations of that movement happened with Democrats in the White House. This is what we can do. 30 years later, 30 years prior, the Bonus Army, which marched on Washington, D.C., these were veterans who came to get the bonus and got their behinds kicked by the national government, but it was their blood that brought about the GI Bill. That's the kind of radical transformation that we can bring about. I was inspired on that campus by the late Kwame Ture Stokely Carmichael. When you talk about Stokely, you're talking about the Nonviolent Action Group. You're talking about the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. You're talking about the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, the Black Panther Party, and ultimately the All African People's Revolutionary Party. You're talking about mass organization, mass mobilization, and mass self-determination. And finally, I leave you with these words. George Jackson said it to us in his prelude to Blood in My Eye. I saw it right there behind Professor Jared Ball. That is a required manifesto for revolutionaries to read. But George Jackson told us, and it rings right now at this very hour, to settle your quarrels. Come together. Yeah. Understand the very true reality of our situation. Understand that fascism is here, that millions have died that could have been saved, and that millions more will die or live half butchered, poor lives. If we fail to act, do what must be done. Embrace your love and humanity, and as Cindy Sheehan told us, in worldwide revolution. So People's Congress means join us, join us, join us, and give up your life for the people. Let's get moving.
One thing that Jonathan mentioned, is that this is a formation that we control, right? This is a formation that we're creating for our communities, not to change somebody else's mind, but to change our own minds about the power that we have when we organize our communities. So we want people who are watching here to think about that, think about how they can make their involvement real, how they can make it even more, how they can continue to grow, to build in their communities, as Jonathan mentioned, block by block, going to our families, going into our communities, talking to our coworkers. What is it that we can do to keep building this kind of a movement, to not rely on these politicians, on the same two parties that for the last 25 years have been leading to more poverty, more devastation, more inequality. If we're honest with ourselves, the problems that we're facing right now are nothing new from the problems that we've been facing in the last 25 years. The mass incarceration, the mass deportation, the unemployment, 1 in 2 people in poverty, those problems existed before Trump. Trump is an acceleration of that problem. But the only way we're going to get to the root of that problem is we organize a bigger force, a more powerful force, which is the force of poor and working people, that 1 in 2 in this country, who can actually change society if we organize and fight for it. So on that note, I want to introduce our next co-convener, Gloria La Riva. She is joining us from San Francisco, California. She is a longtime organizer and activist in her community from the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Please welcome Gloria La Riva.
Hello, sisters and brothers. It's so inspiring here today across the country, and to hear all these great speakers and fighters. More than being speakers, or fighters. The Trump agenda cannot be allowed to go through. Not the massive cuts in healthcare, and not the massive cuts in taxes to the rich, which means we'll be paying more in taxes and social service cuts. One of the things that the People's Congress of Resistance is doing is fighting to change the narrative that has been jammed down our throats for so long. Change the narratives and arm ourselves with facts, demands, a plan, and a purpose that spells economic and social justice and turns the lies around into truth. We've been told that people are poor because they're lazy, because they made bad mistakes, because they have all kinds of issues that keeps them from being productive. The super rich and the rich, who are now fully represented in the Trump regime, have hammered away, for example, about the entitlements that they claim poor people have lived too high off the hog for too many years, and which have to be eliminated entirely. Of course, there's very few entitlement programs that still exist. And what are they? I asked a young person last night at a party, what does entitlement mean to you? He said, well, what I hear it being said is that people are living off of somebody else and not working and just getting things for nothing. I explained to him the history and the meaning of entitlements. It was the premise for decades after the struggle of the 30s that if your income, whether as a family or an individual, met a certain guideline of poverty, you were entitled to federal assistance, to a guarantee of paying 25% of whatever your income was for your housing so that you wouldn't be homeless, that you could receive general assistance, especially for children, cash payments. These were not a luxury. It was really minimal, but it kept you from dying of hunger. And later in the 1960s, there were food stamps. There was a huge support so that you wouldn't starve. Then later became Medicaid in the 1960s, and of course, the one for everyone, Medicare, when you become a senior or disabled. Later, with the health crisis of AIDS and and the poverty that came from the Reagan regime, came things like Meals on Wheels. That was first started as a volunteer program, but later became a federal program. And of course, the free lunches and breakfasts that children could get and still somewhat get came about because of the Black Panthers' great struggle.
You are so different and so great.
I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico in those 60s, and my family, my mother, father, and 6 kids, we were beneficiaries of housing subsidies, of all those entitlements, of welfare for a few years, of food stamps, because my parents' wages were so low, like so many other people. Those programs helped us have a home, security, the ability to go to school. Affirmative action helped us get into college. Today, all of us kids have good jobs, education. We were able to have a future because of these entitlements. And I dread to think of what similar families today live like now. We see it everywhere. Children who live in homeless shelters, if they're even lucky to have a shelter. Some live in the street with their families or in cars. And by the way, assistance to families of dependent children was gutted by Bill Clinton. Millions of people were thrown off, especially poor women were thrown off of welfare. And we see the results today. What happened to entitlements? They were stripped almost entirely from the people, starting with Reagan. I told this young man last night at the party, I said, did you know that the word homeless did not even exist before 1982? He was astounded. I said, that's because homelessness did not exist. I said, because of the program that guaranteed housing subsidy for poor people, when Reagan came in, his first year's budget in 1982 meant that 80% of all that subsidized housing program was eliminated. And you saw an explosion and the surgence of homelessness. And even to show that people didn't even have a word for it at first, for this phenomena, which is now permanent. The New York Times in 1983 issued an article, and they said, from now on, we will no longer use the word vagrant or hobo. That's what people used before homeless was used. We will no longer use the word vagrant or hobo. We will now use the word homeless to describe the situation. But when history goes by and programs disappear for years, people don't even know that it existed. That's why we're fighting to change the narrative to say, yes, there is entitlements today, but they're entitlements for the rich, like the loopholes that mean that military contractors like General Dynamics and Lockheed and Boeing don't even pay taxes, or the massive tax shelters where literally hundreds of corporations like Apple and Google, I can't name all of them, Goldman Sachs, they have tax shelters by the hundreds, actually the thousands, in the Caribbean islands where trillions of dollars of potential income for this government to feed the people, to give people jobs and job training, education could be provided, but they're hogging all this wealth. Many young people don't know this, but this is part of our struggle to change the narrative. And now Trump wants to deepen this crisis, to cut everything that we need in order to hand over to the $1 trillion budget of the Pentagon that already exists. And what does that Pentagon budget mean? It means threatening peoples all over the world. It means deepening the war in Syria that Obama and before him Bush started, actually under Obama. The war and the aggression against Venezuela, the aggression against Cuba, and of course the very dangerous threat against North Korea, which has a right to defend itself. Today, by the way, I want to mention that hundreds of Palestinian prisoners are on hunger strike, and more people are joining them today. The great Palestinian woman fighter, Layla Khaled, has announced that she's joining the hunger strike, and we salute her and all the Palestinian prisoners and the Palestinian people for their right to self-determination. And part of our program is also to say, cut all U.S. funding to Israel. We have an international program in addition to the domestic, because you can't have jobs at home if you have war, oppression, and occupation abroad. They go together. And that's why we're for real peace and social justice, by shutting down all the U.S. bases, by bringing the troops home to have a real job at home, to help restructure this country so that people can have clean drinking water all over the country and everything else. Entitlements. The members of U.S. Congress will never suffer a cut in their entitlements. They get premium health care and don't pay a penny. When the government gets shut down, they don't lose anything. They get a very comfortable income and travel privileges that we foot the bill for. And then later, they get to work for the very companies that used to pay them as lobbyists. They're the ones who voted for the disaster of this health care bill in the House. They're certainly entitled. And they're never the ones who debate. There's never a debate you've ever heard about whether there's enough money for military spending. They vote on it 100%. We cannot count on the corrupt Congress to do this. As everyone else has said, it will take the people, as the people have always shown, that it's a struggle that makes change. We have a lot to fight for, sisters and brothers. In these 110 days of Trump's regime, millions of people have fought and marched, have filled the town halls to jam up those Congress people and demand that they not vote against the people. There are many protests arising, and what we need is this joining together of all those movements and struggles with a program and a plan for justice for all of us. The right to a decent job, the right to economic security, the right to peace, the right to no discrimination of any kind, the right to an end to police killings and brutality, the right to equality regardless of citizenship status. We, as part of this Congress, we're going to be organizing caravans that will bring people from across the country. And Anoa, the sister who spoke earlier about making sure that people who don't have funds can participate, you can be sure that that is going to be a key part of this work. We have to raise money so that people from communities from the Southwest, families of prisoners, from the native reservations, from the Appalachians, from people who were devastated by poverty, by whole towns getting shut down, by plant closings, by the drug crisis of opioids that the pharmaceuticals make the profits from. We will get everyone to Washington. On to the struggle, on to victory. Thank you.
We're going to hear from Margaret Flowers. Dr. Margaret Flowers is the co-director of Popular Resistance.
Hi everyone, this is Margaret Flowers with Popular Resistance, and congratulations to Answer and the other conveners of the People's Congress of Resistance. I'm very excited to be with you on this day where we launch this important effort. I wish that I could be with you in person, but if all goes well, right now I'm in Arlington, Virginia, in the neighborhood of the FCC Chairman Ajit Pai, handing out door hangers to his neighbors to let them know that the chair of the FCC is getting ready to get rid of the net neutrality protections that we won in 2015. He plans to introduce the process to get that started on May 18th at the FCC's public meeting. So right now is a really critical time for us to impact the chairman of the FCC, Ajit Pai, and push him to not do that. We launched a new campaign. It's called Protect Our Internet, protectourinternet.org. And if you go there, you can sign up, get involved. There's a tool where you can send an email to the chairman. But more importantly, we really have to mobilize in the streets and put pressure on him. So we have a lot of actions coming up, and I hope you'll get involved in that. This is just, one example of what's happening right now under the Trump administration, where some of the gains that we've made over the past few years are being rolled back, and the same policies that have been so damaging are continuing or worsening. Trump has really brought all of these issues that we've been fighting for a long time right up into the forefront, put them right in front of our face, and so it's up to us, it's our responsibility right now to organize and mobilize and fight back against this agenda, which has been a long time agenda, and also to put forward positive alternatives. Our Congress right now, it's been a plutocracy for a long time. Now Congress and the administration are just very openly a kleptocracy, and there's only one way that we can overcome that, and that's by mobilizing and organizing in our communities. We do have the power to fight back, and the only way we're going to get the changes that we need is if we do that. I think that in the long term, if we do this work and build this movement, that our social movement will be more important, more significant than anything that the Trump administration can do. Now, a key issue right now is health care. We know that the Democrats put forward the Affordable Care Act 7 years ago, and that did not solve our health care crisis because it was still based on maintaining our market system of health care that leaves tens of millions of people out and allows tens of thousands of people to die every year of preventable causes, as well as driving hundreds of thousands of families into bankruptcy due to medical illness. The Republicans are trying to pass through legislation, the American Health Care Act, or AHCA, which will take us even farther in the direction of privatization, with tens of millions more probably losing their coverage and health insurance becoming even less protective than it is right now. So this is really a crucial time for us to say that both of those approaches, the Democrats' approach and the Republicans' approach to the healthcare crisis, have failed, and that we really must organize and demand a national improved Medicare for all. We're already spending enough money on healthcare in this country to provide high quality, comprehensive coverage to everyone. We have the resources. We have majority public support on our side, but this Congress, neither party right now, is going to really put this issue on the table, and definitely they're not going to fight for it. So we have to. We have legislation in the House introduced by John Conyers with a record number of co-sponsors, 109, but these members of Congress are basically just putting their name on it. They're not really doing anything more than that. And in the Senate side, we really need to push a member of the Senate to introduce companion legislation. Senator Sanders said he was going to do that. He's recently backed down from that. And we really need that legislation to be a mirror of what the House legislation is. So it's up to us to organize and mobilize in our communities, understand that healthcare impacts everything, and so we can work together and really change the political culture that makes national improved Medicare for all the solution that is the only politically feasible solution. So let's not waste a lot of time right now defending policies that haven't solved the crisis. Let's educate, organize, and agitate for national improved Medicare for all. And you can learn more about that at healthoverprofit.org. I really look forward to working with you throughout this year, in September in Washington, D.C. at the People's Congress of Resistance and beyond, because out of these crises that we're facing, our opportunity is really for us to remake our society, to put forward bold solutions and create the kind of world that we want to live in, a world that's peaceful, that's healthy, that has abundance for all of us and is sustainable. That is all within our power, and it's the only way that we're going to win these changes. So I'm with you in solidarity. I wish I could be with you live today, and I look forward to continuing with you in the struggle. Thank you.
What we're going to do right now is we are going to share a video from Professor Jodi Dean, and then we are going to wrap up.
I'm Jodi Dean, and I'm a college professor and organizer in Geneva, New York. I also write and lecture about socialism, communism, left political movements, and political resistance. I'm excited about the People's Congress of Resistance. It's a vital opportunity for multiple struggles, as well as the new resistance that has emerged in response to Trump. It's a way for all of these to come together and inspire and strengthen each other. I think it will help us get a much clearer sense of not just what we're against, but who we are and what we stand for, what we're fighting for together. You know, Hillary Clinton recently said that she is part of the resistance. I disagree. We're not on the same side. Hillary Clinton defends corporations, big banks, the fossil fuel sector, militarism, imperialism. That's not resistance. She defends private property. But most of us don't have any property. What we have are our lives and our bodies, our labor power, and the bankers and bosses keep taking even that from us. Right? They keep drawing us into debt, foreclosing on our houses, on our future, on our kids. This is what Hillary Rodham Clinton defends: private property, exploitation, imperialism. That's not the resistance, right? It's not any resistance at all. That's what we're against. So I'm excited about a real People's Congress of Resistance that will make it clear what we're for and what we are opposing. It'll also be a great opportunity for letting us get to know each other better and building the kind of strength and solidarity alliance that we're going to need for what will clearly be a long and harsh and intense struggle. I expect that a key element that the charter or platform or politics that the People's Congress of Resistance will affirm will emphasize environmental justice and climate justice. You know, there are millions of people all over the world. In fact, the majority of people in the world actually live in sacrifice zones. That means those areas that capitalism is willing to let die, to sacrifice in their own interest, in their interest of pursuing private property and consolidating their hold on all of the world's wealth. You know, I live in Geneva, New York, and we've been active there lately working on some environmental political issues. In our area, the city has known for 30 or 40 years that an old factory contaminated the yards of people, of working class people, many of whom are people of color, not native English speakers. And the city knew that their yards were contaminated with arsenic and soil. They let these families let their kids play in dirt, knowing that the kids were ingesting lead and arsenic, knowing that these are major health hazards. And we actually can document this. We've got documents that said that the city knew in the 80s and 90s that this was going on, and they did nothing. Why? Because what they care about is private property for developers, private property for investors, private property just for the sake of profit, not for the actual people, not the people who are the city, are the community. And Geneva's just one example. It's happening everywhere, right? We know this from Flint. We know that the capitalist class is willing to do what they can to make money, even as the entire environment basically is destroyed, and as the temperatures in the all over the planet rise. So I think one of the things that's exciting about environmental justice right now is it's a key site of working class struggle, right? Our neighborhoods are places where the class struggle is unfolding. And so I expect that the People's Congress of Resistance is going to hold up environmental struggles, hold up the importance of climate justice, and use this for what the people want over and against the corrupt and hopeless Congress of the millionaires that we oppose.
Around the country. We want you to go to congressofresistance.org/volunteer. Again, that's congressofresistance.org/volunteer. Continue to resist, and we want to open up our floor to discussion. Now, I know all the different groups are going to want to have a chance to talk, so we're going to end the live stream now. We hope you have a great discussion. and we will see you September 16th and 17th in Washington, D.C. Thank you.